There we go.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Greatly appreciate you coming out on such a, well, it's a lot better than the last time we had this meeting, which was cold, it was well below zero. And we thank you for coming because it was rather thin participation last time around. This is a neighborhood meeting. The objective of this is basically to get your attitudes and your opinions of those of you who live in what we're calling right now the Townhouse Corner District. Townhouse Corner District is historically a name, and I'm sure the Historic Society can tell us more than I can about it, but it traditionally has been that area near the, at the confluence of what we now know as Sinnott, Arundel, and a Log Cabin Road. There was an area there that was a nexus of part of the community that was its center. There was a meeting house there. It is now, I believe, the Congregational Church. It also was the trolley station for the Kennebunk area, Kennebunkport area. And a number of businesses were there, and it was an important section of the town. So much so that Google still insists, until very recently, where it was informed otherwise, that that was the center of Arundel. That was, in fact, where Arundel was Townhouse Corner. Now, those of you who live here, hello. Would you like to sign it? And if you could grab one of the questionnaires, that'd be great. There's been a lot of talk in the past about the area having served a number of different functions throughout the history of the town, and that this area not just was a residential or farming area, that it was in fact used for a different mixed uses, businesses and residents. And that's evident in what's down there now. We have evidence of businesses that have been there in the past. The Grange Hall, as you all know, is on Arundel Road. We have several businesses that still exist, and businesses on both sides of Log Cabin Road. In fact, it's very interesting. At the last meeting, we had Warner Jillian, who's the town planner in Kennebunkport, come and give a little bit of an ad hoc presentation on what that area has meant to Kennebunkport, and the fact that they're considering making some changes to reinstate some of the mixed uses that were down there at some point. So they were very much interested in what we're proposing, or what we're exploring. And I should say exploring at this particular time, because quite frankly, right now our zoning ordinance has that as a rural conservation district, even though we have a lot of existing businesses down in that area. And it is very limiting as to what can occur. So our intent here is to get an idea of what the community who lives there, who pays taxes, who has homes and businesses in that area, what they think, what they want to see for the future of this neighborhood that we're calling Townhouse Corner. And you'll notice that we do have a map. I'm not going to put it up because we really kind of want you folks to establish what the boundaries of this district are. What do you think the boundaries are? There's a lot, everything is on the table in this meeting. We want to hear your comments, your discussions. We're going to have a presentation. Jen Gross, who is the manager, who's on the Economic Development Committee, and who is the owner of Wings, will be making a presentation that will discuss some of the issues down there. You have a questionnaire in front of you. If you get a chance, please fill that out. And we'll be discussing some of those issues, having a community discussion about some of the issues that are raised in the questionnaire, as well as any issue you want to talk about. So get your questions up in your mind and your concerns, and we'll be very thankful for your input. Right now, I would like to introduce also that our members of the Economic Development Committee, which you know who they are. We have Ira Camp, who is the guy with his hand up. Ira is the chairman. Linda Zook, who's the vice chair. We don't have a treasurer anymore. Secretary. Jen Rose. No, hang on. Jen Burrows, raise your hand, Jen. Okay. Sam Hall and John Bell. We also have the chairman of the planning board here as well. Very interested in this because the planning board is currently in the process of rebuilding, redesigning the entire zoning ordinance from top to bottom. And obviously they've given a charge to the Economic Development Committee to explore the possibility of this, of what the future should be in this neighborhood. Whether it should be mixed use, whether it should be farm and forest, whether it should be something else. So the Economic Development Committee is seized on this as one of the many tasks that they're taking on. And they're hosting this get-together right now on behalf of not only their tasks, but also what the planning board is looking to do. Those of you who don't know or might not have come in late, there are coffee and refreshments up here, and Jen would really appreciate it if she didn't have to take it. Last time she had to take platters home. So, with that, I'd like, Jen has put together a presentation on the district, photographic presentation, which I think you're going to find very interesting. It's going to be presented on the smart board, and hand it over to Jen.
It's very brief. First off, I am the owner of Wiggs down at the Townhouse Corner, and my personal rhyme and reason for this is more or less, I'll be honest with you, I went to the bank to get a commercial loan. I need a new roof, and I need some siding and some upkeep. And my business is grandfathered because when it was purchased, I was in an R3, which included some mixed zoning, and then it got changed to R2. So therefore, I'm one of those people that the bank really doesn't enjoy. They don't want to give me a commercial loan. There are loans out there, on Honoree's behalf. However, it's not a traditional loan because there's a lot of controversy about what it is. I have many copies of the R3, the R2, being grandfathered, and really what it came down to is if I want to present a 5-year plan, I am grandfathered, but that is it. So, not that I'm looking to make the place bigger. I'd like to keep it the same foot pattern, but I would like to, as a commercial business, I want to have a commercial loan. I don't want to turn the place into a residential loan because therefore if everything tanks in the stock market and my loan gets pulled, I don't have the same kind of security there. And I don't want to make it into a 3-unit condo. So that's why this all started coming up about. So I went around to quite a few of my neighbors and everyone that came into the area and, said, this is what I want to do, I'm very fortunate. I have some great neighbors on the side of me that have grown up in that area who run the store. And much on their behalf, they're like, oh, go ahead, dear. That's, I'm like, no, we need a little bit more of the input. Also, I'm a very strong community person who has some objective feelings about what has happened in Lower Village and in Kennebunkport, and I really don't want that to happen to our little townhouse area. So I would like to see some control put in. I don't want to force people out that have lived there for years, who have their homes there. The area has developed right along, and I don't really want to change that. I would like to add to it, but I don't want to take its greatness away. So, that being said, these are all photos that I collected. This is the original house next door where Wiggs is. This is the station that was removed. This is the original footprint of where Wiggs was. And the upper left corner is where the Arundel Market and the Big Apple are. And of course we've got from Harris Farm, and over there by the Arundel Boat Store. back in the hustle and bustle of the trolley era.
What is that event? What is that? What is that place?
That's the car terminal.
Wow. That was last week, right?
Right. Possibly this Friday.
Stop
I put together a small list of existing businesses along the area. And then when doing some research of trying to give some ideas, I just wanted to put some visuals to the possibilities of what businesses could look like if we were allowed to have in that area. There's quite a few proposals that we're looking at for the EDC when we started putting out things like, okay, we have this strip from Route 1 to Kennebunkport. What could we do with that? And we were all pretty informant in making sure that we wanted to look residential. We started putting stipulations in of our ideas, and that's how this really evolved. We said, let's just make sure that we call all the neighbors together and see what their input is as well. This is the McDonald's in Freeport.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's really cool.
These are shops down in the Cape. These are just more resources. These are pictures of the existing businesses that are presently there. The one on the left is details, and there's also Brian Boschman's place in there as well. He does some hauling of boats and storage. The one on the right is Hans Sinclair's lot. This lot was trying to be developed, Ted, what do you say, 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, where they wanted to put in a small nursery in this area, and they were working pretty diligently, and they were told that that was not allowed down there. So therefore, they let the property go.
Nursery, like trees nursery?
Trees,
Yeah.
shrubbery. One of the proposals of different ideas, when I say adding businesses to the area, there's certain things that we've started to look at economically, like what can we do to help Arundel? What's the number one problem that our sister towns have? These are two properties that have some acreage with them, and if it was allowed and guided properly through the neighborhood, this could be granted a weekend parking spot for an overflow. There's a lot of events down in Kennebunkport that go on where they don't have the parking. If these people wanted to do that, they could do some private parking and make some money. And at the same time, in order to do that, the town could propose a parking permit for mass gathering with an allotted fund on that and generate income.
Where are those located?
These are right on Log Cabin Road. These are also, I believe, this is your copy here. This is where Arundel Woodcrafters is. Rich Woodman builds boats and maintains wooden structure boats, and I think he does some fiberglass there as well. I'm not sure. We won't talk about it. Yeah, mostly wood. And the other one is the Van Gaspy residence, where all the stonework. And when I bring up this, is that part of Log Cabin Road that just looks like you don't really notice the boat building. And then when you can't come across this, it looks like there's just some areas that I think that we could either help as a town, either with promoting the business, or put some stipulations as far as, you know, how we like to have the look of the greenery. So that's my little presentation in a nutshell.
Thank you, Jan.
Do you want me to put this up, Pat?
We don't have enough, overhead crumbs, we just don't have enough.
So, Ken,
Yeah.
I'm not too familiar with all the zoning. You were saying that Links is grandfather, but even so, you can't get the type of commercial loans you need because of the way
It's a mixed piece of property, and it gets into a sticky area where right now it's residential. So I could go for a substantial residential loan. It just locks me in other stipulations as far as how the loan is processed, the allotment that is in the process that I have to grow with it.
So what does the grandfather do for you?
Lets me run a convenience store there.
Even though it's zoned
Even though it's
residential, you'd
zoned
like to see it
residential.
rezoned into something commercial?
Or mixed use, for where it's when it was before.
Something is, probably have to better explain it, but if something is grandfathered, that does, you know, it's still a non-conforming piece of property. That means there's no, you know, you can't expand it, you can't do anything.
Oh, okay.
There's no possibility of
It's
expansion.
just still allowed to be there.
You can do some expansions, but it's very limited. It's limited to 30% expansion of the building. For uses on the property that are not directly associated with the building, that there's no expansion of use, there's only expansion of structure in our zoning ordinance. So use has to be within the structure. If you had, let's say, a nursery, for instance, you wouldn't be able to expand the nursery 30% or 50%. You would only be able to expand the nursery building, depending on the circumstances. So, you know, that is an issue. Again, this is a historic area that had a mixture of different uses in it. Right now, it's predominantly residential. We have existing businesses. I think Jen's brought that up. That still thrive. In some cases, still thrive out there, and seem to be getting along pretty well with their neighbors. At least, let's put it this way: I don't get complaints, so I assume everything's going well, or at least going along fine at the moment. But the issue is really what about this neighborhood? What it historically has been a mixed use, meaning it has mixed both residential and businesses. They're all pretty much small scale businesses except what's across the street, which everybody knows is R.H. Brown, which isn't so small. But most of the businesses in that area are small. What mixed use really means is exactly as the term says. It's a mixture of residential uses, a mixture of institutional uses, meaning schools, churches, town things, nonprofits. It's also a mixture of businesses with residences, and they all work together and combine together as a neighborhood. Historically, in Maine, and historically in New England, we developed as mixed-use communities. The Wheel Lake was right next to the parsonage, because they were all the same scale, small scale. You didn't have, it wasn't until we started getting into the Industrial Revolution, we started having smokestacks or industries, or large industries, brickmaking or something like that, that really involved creating nuisances that were no longer acceptable in a residential neighborhood where you've got your property, you want to enjoy that property for residential purposes. But in order to gauge whether or not what's appropriate and what isn't, I think we first have to identify what is this neighborhood? I mean, what is the character of this neighborhood? What is it now? We have our perceptions. What's important is what is your perception of this neighborhood? I really would like to start off by asking us what is the character of this neighborhood? How would you folks define it? We've defined it. Jen's given a very nice presentation on with some visuals of what it's like, but it's really important to you as property owners down there. What is the character of this part of town?
Doesn't have much character.
Okay. Doesn't have much character. Now, why do you say it doesn't have much character?
Well, it's residential. I live on Lock Haven Road with a few little businesses kind of hidden away that don't look so great. And it'd be better if somehow they could be helped along. And I don't know why they don't look so great. Maybe because they couldn't grow. I mean, I know we wouldn't be a town center, but Winks is sort of our town center.
Didn't have anything to do about whoopie pies.
No.
So some of the businesses. No, she didn't. That's really good stuff. Okay, so there's one thing. There's one character. It's residential. What you're saying is it's basically residential. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
There's not much distinction when you get on for and you go through a running attendant, it's just that one whole sign, there's nothing really saying this is a bundle.
Okay, so there's no identification of it, nothing distinctive that identifies it as Arundel?
Yes. I think that's what is desired.
Yeah, there's that little sign that shows the road divided in half.
That's
Any
it.
monk word Arundel.
Yes.
I didn't even know what that meant until I lived here. Yeah.
It's how you make your kingdom from.
Right. So you're saying it's more of a, it's just sort of corridor to get to Kennebunk?
Which is okay.
Would you like it to be distinctive? For the purpose of just improving the neighborhood, or we're saying this is Arundel?
Yeah, that's what there's some pride there, and there's a group that's trying to build that.
Okay. So we should identify ourselves as Arundel. Okay. Any other comments on the character? I mean, do you consider, so it's residential, does everybody agree it's pretty much residential?
Kennebunkport for the Historical Society is that residential, that part of town for Kennebunkport?
Right now.
You got Bobby Bradley Brown there.
Yep. Got Brown, he's a non-conforming use. He experiences the same problems every other non-conforming use does. Non-conforming uses never used to be kind of a dirty word. I think it's become more and more of a problem, not so much from a zoning standpoint, but from really from a financing standpoint. I think Jim brought that up, and I've run into that, frankly speaking, in my position as town planner here. I've run into that multiple times, where banks just are very uncomfortable about loaning to businesses that are non-conforming, which means that they have limitations on them. Whether they're real or perceived is immaterial. The banking community doesn't like that term non-conforming, because it's not conforming. So they want the word conforming. Don't mention floodplain, because if you have floodplain anywhere near your land, the banks get very upset. I'm not trying to beat up on Ira, but that's the way of financial.
I don't do commercial loans anyway, but, no, I mean, but if you do have a mixed-use zone, you can do residential lending, and you can do commercial lending in those zones, because in zoning, it says you're allowed to do both, so it would be conforming, which is what we do here.
What's the status of Will 4 problems? Is there anything going on there at all? And why is there, why isn't there? I know there's been a lot of people trying to do different things. Is that indicative of what's going on in that mixed use or whatever it is?
Yeah, it is. I mean, Linda can speak to it because she knows it intimately at this point. But I can speak to this planner and say this, before Linda, you know, Linda bought that, and they were looking to do a number of things with it. People before they came have asked to put a Montessori school in there, have asked to put a lodging facility. Basically it was a non-owner occupied bed and breakfast, not bed and breakfast, a boarding house. They've asked to put, for help, boarding house for help, which requires, dirty secrets, the town also looked at it as potential, whether or not we could put a town hall in it. There's been a number of different uses. Planning board actually, wow, we entertained 2 people who came and asked us to put uses in there and couldn't do it. It would entail changing zoning. So there are some real strict limitations of what you can do with forefathers. And right now, forefathers can be a duplex. It's not laid out for that. There's very few things you can do with that.
How much acreage is there?
Bring it up.
It's mainly parking.
Yeah, but right now it's storage, and it's going to remain that way until, we're going to do something with it. It's going to be fantastic, we just don't know what yet. It's residential right now, can't do anything with it.
Forefathers was the old restaurant and tavern that used to be.
I wanted to go back to where it was.
The old restaurant?
Forefathers.
The old
Incidentally, this is a map of the district only going up to John Clough Road. And you pointed to, this is, right now, for instance, this is Goss Mill Brook right here. This is River Road and then Arundel Road. We've got Winks here. We've got the Grange Hall, which is now Kennebunkport Bicycle. I'm supposed to change that to Arundel Bicycle. We've got Sinclair's here. Forefathers is right here. See, it's not that huge of an area. We've got Details right here. Great sign, by the way. That sign. We've got Details. We've got the Main Place here. Sawyer Lane is right up here. See, it starts petering around right in here. This pond is the remnants of gravel pit. There are gravel deposits out here, hence R.H. Brown, and this remnant of gravel pit. And believe it or not, right now, the zoning permits gravel operations as conditional use in the area. But you can't put in a boarding house. And that's not to say that the zoning ordinance is wrong. It's to say that the zoning ordinance may not fit this particular stretch of the road at this particular time. Up here we have the Trolley Museum. It's off map. And farther up, as you know, on Long Cabin Road, we have a number of other businesses that seem to fit pretty well into their neighborhood. Houston Company is up there, and this is actually a very small corridor. There's very little on Senate Road, very little. But this is basically the context. And across the street, you had asked the question, what's going on in Kennebunkport? Well, Kennebunkport down here, they've got a zone that's pretty similar to ours. They call it Farm and Forest. It's 3-acre lots. And they have a number of them. That extends down to the Historic Society. Thereafter, they have what's called the Free Enterprise Zone, which is pretty much, I won't say it's anything you want, but it's a much less restrictive zone for commercial and residential mixed use. But in this area, they have a zoning that's very similar to ours, and they've had some questions on whether or not they're making the best use of that area, since this is really the gateway into Kennebunkport, or like we like to say, this is the gateway into Arundel. So they're looking at what this group and what this neighborhood is considering very seriously.
Kennebunkport is proposing to make changes on the other side of the road.
Yeah.
And to be honest with everyone, the reason why we felt it was so important to get the neighborhood together was because as an economic development committee, we were looking at different ideas of what we could do. And I really have a lot of beliefs that, you know, we came up with some great ideas, and therefore they're like, hey, we got the other side of the road.
Yeah, they were here at the last meeting, so.
You know, they like the ideas as well. And I was like, I want to Arundel first. I want us to own it.
Could you share some of those ideas that are floating around?
Well, we had talked about, in Kennebunk, there's no place to park. Right now, they've got it all zoned off and shut off, that if you have an RV or anything of that size, you cannot park in town. You're not allowed to park down the municipal parking lot. You've got Red Apple Campground on the Senate Road that has the mobile homes that come in. We could take advantage of, say, a site like Four Fathers, of allowing buses, larger vehicles to park there with fees involved. They don't have any places, they're having all these wonderful weddings and mass gatherings, they don't have any place to park cars. We could take advantage of that. You know, it's a very low impact as far as what it puts on our area. It's not a permanent situation, as long as it's stipulated the right way. And so far, no one in the port has thought of that, or even has come up with a plan to do so on that side of the road. Since I've owned Wings, I've known 7 businesses that have wanted to go up and down Log Cabin, and we're turning them away. And these people are working hard. They're coming up, they're trying to find out what's going on, what can they do, and they're being turned away. Warner told us at the last meeting they have not had one person come to them that wants to do business on their side of the road. So it was also presented that, well, let's see what they do. I don't want to wait and see what Kennebunk Park says. I want to do it for us.
Besides the parking, what other kinds of ideas are floating around?
Nurseries,
An art gallery?
art gallery.
Well, before we continue down that road, I think what we really still are saying at this point, these are some of our ideas. I think what we want to do is get ideas from the neighborhood and from the residents and people who also own property down there, and get their impressions on, first of all, what's special about their neighborhood, why they moved there. I mean, that's the first question I would ask. Why'd you go? Why'd you move? Who's here from this district? Okay, going around. Why'd you move to that district?
The house was in the forest.
House was in the forest. So you had elbow room. You were alone. Privacy. Okay.
No traffic.
Okay. So it's privacy. And traffic was low. Anything else? Was it the land or was it just the location?
It was both.
It was both? Okay. And did you know anybody? Were there any neighbors or anybody down there that you'd known before? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were familiar with the area. So it's a place that you sought out. It wasn't just that there was a house available in the woods. Okay. So you really did seek out this area. Okay. Because why? Why this area? Now, it couldn't be just, there's plenty of places with woods.
I went to the University of New England, St. Francis College. I came up here in '66 and essentially never left. But I traveled for my job. This was the area of my home. And when I stopped traveling, I decided to buy. I was 12 years old.
So this is your refuge. You, sir?
I get to live next to Paul.
Always.
That's another thing. No, I came here, we wanted kids, dogs, and we needed the land.
Okay.
So I'm the house right next to the Grange Home.
Oh, okay. Which side?
Yeah, on
Which
the south
hall
side.
is, oh boy, I can't even, this
Yeah.
side or this side?
No, on the side not next to it, it's the south side.
This one right
Yeah,
here? Okay.
yeah, and so, it was, and I like the fact that there's a little general store that's down the street, I mean, that, to me, that really, like, the kids can walk down, it's safe, there's traffic, but, who doesn't have traffic? Unless you live on a total side street. So, I mean, it's a good location where it's not lower village or any, so even in the summer, I don't think the traffic is that bad. I think we're more off the beaten path enough in that area where it's just makes it a great place to raise a family.
I think a lot of people are using on the road though as a bypass. Instead of going through Kennebunk Court. Same with Central Road, River Road.
Yeah,
The traffic has increased tremendously over the years.
yeah,
on our road.
How many years has it been since the traffic's increased?
Oh, probably in the last 5 or
Really?
so.
yeah.
But okay, I've lived there well over 20, and it's progressively gotten more developed.
Okay.
Then the other area that has an impact is Goose Rocks Road, where cars all come out of there and either go up on Log Cabin Road or down into Kennebunk Court. They've really got a traffic jam out of that road at the intersection of Log Cabin.
So that's where you think the problem is. It's not.
I'm sorry?
That's where you think the real problem is. So the real problem is on Goose Rocks. It's not on Arundel Road or River Road or even Log Cabin Road.
Yeah.
Well, it's Log Cabin Road via Goose Rocks Road. That's what you're saying? Pretty much?
Just noticed a lot of traffic increase in that.
Yeah, but he looked at a lot of development.
We've seen some traffic.
All those houses down there.
Oh, there's a lot of new houses.
Yeah.
On Goose Rock?
No, down where we are, on the other side of the street from the Grange Hall, down back towards the golf course. Yeah, there's been a lot of building. I've been here 7 years, so.
But in zoning where we are, they've sort of made it a rural area of Arundel, cuts into a residential area of Kennebunk Court. So you got huge conflicting zoning requirements for building, for instance. We're 3 acres and Kennebunk Court's 2 or less.
I get it. Ordinance.
Yeah.
No. Okay. But you've been here 20 years. So why did you come here originally? Why did you come down to this neighborhood originally? Lots of places on the run.
I bought a family house.
So it was the same thing, family? It's the same sort of thing? It was a good place to raise a family?
Oh, yeah. Well, my kids were out of high school when we moved here, so they were in college or graduated. Oh, they were in college.
So why down in this area versus anywhere else? Why not on Goose Rocks Road or anywhere else?
Because I bought a family
Oh, a
house.
family house. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I thought it was a house for a family. Okay, well, yeah. How is that? Thanks. This is why I have coaches. And you, ma'am, why did you move there?
Oh, it's an uneducated, uninformed decision.
There's a lot of
No, that's not. No, we've been here, I've been here 42, 43 years. But we just
few changes.
came into the state, had no place to live, saw a cheap house and bought it.
Something to be said for that.
And the kids went to school here and they were fine.
Never mind. Great. So it was just, hey, this is a good place. It looks good. We're landing here.
Yeah.
Okay. And has it been everything you've expected?
I prefer to live in Arundel because the taxes are much cheaper than the other side of the road.
Okay.
And I like being close to Kennebunk Park,
Why?
at the beach. So I like this end of Arundel. But it could be funkier.
How do you mean funkier?
Oh, yeah, art gallery.
What do art galleries do in your mind? What would they do to you?
Well, I'm an artist.
Keep stepping.
There's some soul to your life.
So it puts you closer to the artist community and the galleries
Yeah.
where things are happening. There's activity. And there certainly is a lot of activity down in Kennebunk Port, in the port, in the Dock Square area. And you, sir, you said you had raised
I
your...
bought it as a rent, actually, a long time ago, and bought it with a partner, and wants to do a lobster farm, he was a lobster. And it never materialized, the partnership, so we never went any further with it. But surrounded by businesses, I think that it's, you should be able to utilize the traffic and the draw to pull people into the area. not just for the port, but whatever you're gonna end up doing down there as an individual.
So you bought business property? You didn't buy
It was an
residential?
electrical supply, it's actually no more than electrical.
Okay.
Jimmy Nichols, right between Sinclair's and Brown.
Oh, okay.
So you
Wow,
bought
we don't
it
have you down.
with the intention to use as a
We were
business,
gonna turn it into a business.
but
and,
now it's
we
residential
didn't
and you're stuck with it.
have the funds at the time to turn it into what we wanted to, and we didn't go any further questioning it. So we rented it out and then dissolved the partnership and had some local friends that actually had half ownership of the building next to us, Sinclair's, that wanted to do some stuff and were turned down, so we sold it out to the building. And they're good people that have a good local business and work hard. And, I think it should be exhausted so we can pull people into the area.
Let me just ask you, why down here versus Kennebunk or Lower Village? Why Arundel? It's kind of like, isn't this the back door into Kennebunk Port?
I work in Arundel, there's a lot of good people in Arundel, I don't know why they can't utilize what they have to further what their goals are, I'd say. I don't know what it is.
So it's because you,
It's a good traffic area, there's a lot of traffic on
Okay.
Log Cabin.
so the location
People go a
was
little too
important.
fast right there, but other than that. So if maybe there was some more businesses, people would slow down.
Turning traffic does tend to slow traffic, through traffic down quite a bit. After a couple of rear ends, it does that. It's not, doesn't help in your area.
No, we just do sidewalks and speed.
Just maybe, it's not. And you, ma'am, why did you move there?
Well, it's a little different. I inherited the property from my fiance who passed away 6 years ago. He was a boat builder, and so I've been able to maintain with his buddy moving in and continuing the business, but this is gonna affect me because a year and a half from now, he's moving out. He's bought property in Kennebunkport. So,
Can I ask why he bought property in Singapore?
because he wanted his own place and then he was,
I didn't know if there were stipulations that he couldn't.
oh, no, or, but I'm gonna be in a situation where I need to either find another boat business to live in, or some other type of business, or no business, I have to make a decision.
Now, is it a commercial property or is it
No,
a
it's a
residential?
house
It's a house
behind the
down.
buildings.
If she's somewhat limited with her walking would be beyond boat building as the lot exists now? No? Can you answer that?
I don't really.
I brought a zoning ordinance just in case you asked that question. I don't have it memorized right now, because I don't get a lot of requests in the R4 district. There are things you can do in the R4 district, but to answer that particular question.
But I have no desire to change, put in some kind of business that's gonna change the look.
Right,
But traffic and everything, like, I'd like to maintain it just like this, but.
right, but same thing might happen to her that happened to Mark if she doesn't find somebody in a certain amount of time, correct? You have 2 years, and then it's done.
It's right now, it would be classified as low-impact manufacturing, which is what cabinet makers, boat builders, it's not manufacturing, but it's called low impact. I'd like to call it arts and crafts or craftsmanship.
So even though she's grandfathered as a boat business now, technically another business that fit that same category?
Could go in there, yes,
Yeah.
could go in there, absolutely.
I know you're not looking for that, I'm just trying to.
But if you let more than 2 years expire, then you can't. And that's what happened to forefathers, that's what's happened to a number of
But I
businesses.
have thought about our space, artist space.
Is that the same thing as a cottage industry? 'Cause right now, I could hang a sign out and let people in the studio, right?
Only if you exhibit yours. What you have, under the zoning ordinance, what you have is it's called a home occupation. That's how you would be really registered. Otherwise, you'd be as you sell, you'd be retail.
You could do a service business is what I was told a long time ago.
You can do
can't
something.
retail.
Yes, retail is the problem, because retail generates, technically, or from a zoning standpoint, retail generates more demand for parking than service stuff, especially off-site service. So if you were to put in a home occupation, yes, you can do various things under home occupation. You can do a lot of things under home occupation. We have right down here under a transmission shop that's under a home occupation, because it fits all of the requirements, because and the requirements are very geared towards preserving the character of the residential neighborhood. That, you're limited to the number of employees, the number of people who can work in the business, the amount of business that you have, the area the business takes up. And in your case, with artisan, with an artist, you can sell your work from there and one other artist, but you could not have a gallery. Which is one of the problems that we have right now, is that we have people who want to go in and form galleries, but they can't unless that person's an employee. So it causes all these legal gyrations that.
What's the definition of gallery versus a home studio, if I can sell?
A home studio would be fine, because it's probably just you. It's based on the number of people who are selling.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay? Number of artists displaying
If there
and
were
selling.
6 or 7
That's a problem. That's a problem, that's a gallery. And that's just because of the definition of home occupation. And the intent is, of course, home occupation is something that's supposed to fit into a residential neighborhood, have very little impact on that residential neighborhood, for obvious reasons. When the objective is it's supposed to be an incubator, so that as the business grows, gains, capital, invest resources, that they'll be able to afford to move to a commercial space. It doesn't work that way all the time, so.
If zoning were to be changed, how would it impact our taxes?
When you say your taxes, are you speaking as a resident, are you speaking as a business, a potential business person? Well, I'm getting a little off the subject, but it's a good question. One of the reasons why the EDC is doing this, and one of the reasons why we're starting to examine some of our strategies on how to grow commercial valuation in the town, is because right now we have very, very low commercial valuation in this community, especially versus our surrounding neighbors. When you look at Bedford Saco, it's no contest. What their percentage of commercial valuation is versus residential. Low residential valuation obviously means higher taxes on the residential property owners in order to pay for all the services that the town basically provides. So the idea is to expand commercial. Every community wants to expand the commercial or non-residential tax revenue sources in order to ease the burden on the community. Of course, the lower the taxes, the more attractive the community is to residential buyers. And there's a balance that you want to achieve. Everybody's chasing the same thing, quite frankly. We're a little late to the game. And I don't think it was because, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but I think it was primarily because the community valued its agricultural and its rural roots. The community has gone to great lengths in its comprehensive plan and in the zoning ordinance in order to preserve the character that is Arundel. And that has been identified in your comp plans and your various other efforts, the Historic Society's efforts, as being its agrarian roots, its agricultural fields, its open space, sense of elbow room, sense of historic structures. This is the character of Arundel. And quite frankly, you've got it down in this district right now. You have along River Road, you have basically all the elements of a historic district down there.
But excuse me, if I think just a simple, if it's just saying, normally, if you have more commercial, your residential taxes would go down. However, we were shown by Hay Bunkport that their residential taxes are higher than their commercial because their residential property is more at a higher value. Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, hypothetically, they say if you have an equal balance of commercial property, then your residential property should go down because you have businesses helping support that. Right now, we don't have either one. Right, we don't have anything to really offset that.
we have commercial spots.
And are the commercial zone areas now full? Let's say we
No, they are not.
expanded?
No, they are not. Commercial zoned areas, that's a good question. Commercial zoned areas are not full.
Are they in the wrong spot?
Are they in the wrong spot?
Are they in the wrong place?
Well, you know, that's, what we have is we have our Route 1 commercial area right now is, well, I don't want to get into all this, but I have no choice. It's a good point. No, they're not full. For instance, the BI district, the business industrial district that we have in town right now, is a huge swath of land that goes more than 1,000 feet, goes 2,500 feet almost, between the Unitil pipeline, otherwise known as the Eastern Trail, and Route 1. That's the area that would be north of the Campground Road intersection, just north of, actually, Fritz's. The only problem that we've run into that area is it's basically the mountain. It's part of the mountain. It's shallow to bedrock, extremely expensive to develop. The site development costs are prohibitive. In fact, we've had several people, I've entertained several businesses that came in who wanted, I mean, the land's plentiful, there's great access. The water, ever since we negotiated to get the water pressure improved, we've got great water pressure. We don't have sewer, but we do have water pressure. We do have good power and great access. I mean, you've got two accesses on either end at Biddeford and Kennebunk. Problem was site development costs were just through the roof. In fact, even less than a year ago, I dealt with some guys that wanted to do basically fish farming from Newfoundland. They think it's better here than in Canada to do fish farming. And they were looking at that site, and they just looked at they did a couple of borings and realized that the costs were just prohibitive. We've run into that. On the opposite side, as we happen to that kind of geological formation, we have the swamp. Basically, that all drains down, and we have very wet soils on the opposite side. So the question is, that area there is proven to be not economically feasible, and nobody's really wanting to go in there. We have a few places that they have developed, but I'm not getting any interest right now. Sorry? 111 has a very small area that is currently zoned for commercial, and it goes pretty much up to Dustin's property. There's infill spaces in there, no question. But the problem is the depth there doesn't really fit with the demand that we've seen. We're not seeing Biddeford Crossing expand that direction. There hasn't been a real demand for it because Biddeford Crossing is frankly, it's marginal because it really, frankly speaking, it's an overextension. It's an overexpansion of a model that no longer is relevant. Thank goodness for market capacity, but that kind of the expansion of big box stores those days are over.
Well, I think what's also represented, at least from my knowledge, is the smaller business that wants to do, like we're not, I don't, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think there's been any fishery that wants to do business on Log Cabin. I mean, myself as a resident, I would be a little upset if there was a big fishery out next door, I think what's come across are the small businesses that already fit in and just aren't allowed to be provided there.
Yeah.
Cape Porpoise is a perfect example. I think it's quaint, it's maintained a residential feel, it's maintained a character.
And
And I could see something like that at Town Corner, because there's a restaurant, there's a nice store, there's some ice cream places. And it's all right there, and it's a nice little place to go. That's a good example.
Yeah, it is.
Good example.
But I think it's really important to, I think Mel brings an extremely good point that, we have a lot of commercially zoned land in the town. Question is it in the right place? Does it have the right, here we go.
But there's also a
It's kind of
difference.
working in the same old paradigm. We all have predetermined ideas of what should go in there, what could go in there.
Right.
That's why we hired the consultant to change that paradigm.
Right.
Right.
So let's keep our eyes and ears open
Yep.
to new things.
Yep, absolutely.
Things are different now.
Yep.
We have to look at a new paradigm.
Well, and also, we have to also keep in mind, when you're talking about commercial, like things on Route 1, that those are commercially zoned. with this district, we're not talking about commercial, we're talking about mixed use, very limited type of business model that would be going in there. It's not gonna be a commercial zone that would only allow commercial. Like you wouldn't wanna put a house up on you know, Route 1 or right next to the FD or
Well, let's ask the body that question. And first of all, a little ahead of ourselves, but does this sound like it's something that would be reasonable? Milda, what do you think about this? Such a concept. You've got a family place that's been down there for how many generations?
I'll tell you, how long I've been here, 57 No, I think some tweaking is perfectly sensible, but our family was there because it was rural farmland, and farming is very important. The acres that the nature preserve now, Land Trust has along River Road, in the area next to our homes, and tweaking so that my loved ones and what it needs to be there, but I'm not in favor of opening up to any types of commercial uses that would impinge on the residential rural area that is. And three factors are huge concern for me. We've got the boat school, and that, in my opinion, grew into some enormous thing that is now.
There's no way.
Pardon me?
I couldn't hear.
I said the boat school is on the other end of the river.
Right.
And that expansion to me now is an industrial use for that property, unfortunately. And if we start doing the same thing on the other end, it's just, the homes that become available for purchase will be purchased and turned and whatever. But it will erode that very nice quality that we have in this particular area. Tweaking is fine. I think the home occupations, many of those businesses that you have on there and that are on the list, developed as home occupations. You know, Lovejoy's and you guys, and maybe tweaking that to some degree to allow you don't need to be there, because those are not offensive, I don't think, to anybody. But I remember not being able to sleep when Fort Lauderdale was going on because that noise was crazy. And, you know, in my teen years, I thought it was great, but it was not compatible with the residential neighborhood whatsoever.
Or did they used to have like fans and stuff?
Oh, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
In your mind, if you visualize what you just described, a balance between residential and commercial or long-term business uses, what would be satisfactory to you in terms of that
Well,
balance?
I probably would see the home occupation definition that's currently in the ordinance reviewed and perhaps expanded, but I don't know that it needs to be anything beyond that. I think the idea of a parking lot is not compatible. We've got the buses coming down River Road and Log Cabin Road now all summer long, so that bike riding and all those things that we used to do are dangerous at this point, and to encourage more of that bus traffic and that large number of vehicles that would be used for that kind of thing, I just don't think that type of thing is compatible whatsoever. But small home occupations that are either invisible to the rest of the residences in the area, that's fine. Obviously farming, things that historically have been permitted there. The school use for the range hall, you know, I don't think that was a big problem. The planning board did a great job limiting that, so it couldn't become something that would be, that would overextend into the residential uses.
So 50-50
No,
residential?
no.
What, 80-20, 90-10?
Residential, 80-20.
80-20, roughly.
But it depends more on the use.
I understand that.
I'm not coming up with a formula, it depends more on the use. And as I say, I think many of these developed as home occupations, which were very appropriate, and perhaps that just needs to be worked with so that we can allow those things, artist studios, whatever, those kinds of things, which I don't
So
think.
like art galleries, craft stores, things that are.
Yeah, but once you start getting into the, you know, the parking requirements, that's a problem.
What about the ones that aren't home occupations, like details and stuff like that?
Well, I know details has in the past tried to expand and it wasn't permitted, and I think that's absolutely right. When they're ready to be big, they go to Route 1. Because this is residential. When we're out of commercial spaces in this town, I think it's appropriate to talk about something different, but it's been identified through the comprehensive plan process, and maybe that's outdated at this point, but as a rural residential area. And it at one point had the 5-acre lot sizes. You know that.
You know, we're gonna do if we do rural preservation, kind of get national, go to 10.
I don't think.
Auburn does it. It works. Skinny Atlas, New York does it. It works. The officials who put it through were hung, but. Luckily, I was only a consultant. We got out of there. In any case, okay, well, we have a good point there. The question of the creep factor.
Could I ask one follow-up question?
Sure.
So, like, the problem though that we're having a little bit, like in cases like Wayne's, if we don't actually change it from just home business use to actually some sort of mixed use, where it would be at least some portion allowed for some business and commercial, it's not gonna, even though those businesses that are there now are grandfathered in to continue on with their use, they're not gonna be able to get traditional business type loans and things of that nature to keep their businesses running because it's not a mixed use zone now. So are you saying that you would not be in favor of any sort of mixed use, or just, you would just be in favor of putting it to the home, like business use, where you could basically do that anywhere? I mean, pretty much anybody can have a home business, you know, do whatever at their house. That's not a zoning thing, really. That's a, you know what I mean by that question?
I do.
Oh, okay. So,
I don't know the answer to that, because I am not in favor of labeling it mixed use, it's residential. I'm all in favor of assisting in any way.
I
Allow
understand.
financing to be easier for you. And I think maybe there are ways to do that, but I'm not sure. I'm sure you could support that, so.
Yeah, no, it's just important for us to hear,
Mhm.
you know, because we're going to give you a representation of what can develop once the study comes back. You know, so we're just trying to keep our minds open.
Tad, what are some of the other uses that were proposed for the Grange Hall, what was the arts?
Oh, things that in the past, well, obviously Brandon's thing was there. We had 10 business incubator condo spaces. Those were business, I don't know, that was here when I landed.
Yeah,
You probably remember that one.
Professional office space is
Yeah,
what it
that
was.
was what-
Yeah,
And they were small, they were like 200, 300 square feet, so they were incubators.
yeah.
There weren't going to be huge generators of traffic, because the parking was much less than it would normally be for office. And I think there was also,
Now, we're talking queries about the property, not submitted application. I just want to,
Well, no,
clarify.
although that was approved, now you guys did approve the condos, and then they flipped out when Brandon came.
But the queries, I'd like to hear the answer to the queries, because
Actually, the chairman will tell you more, he's been here much longer than I have.
A lot of the interest has either been from people expressing an interest to do offices, to do a hotel, to do a boarding house, to do whatever. And there's been multiple of those. And there's been members of the board, other committees that have come in and said, hey, we have people that are really interested. But they've never gone through that whole process of filling out and trying to actually build the site.
so do you
So
think
that
that,
would be reviewed.
do you think they're trying to compete with the port, or to augment and give services or use that the port can't give? Or
I
doesn't,
think
or
it
doesn't
does.
give?
I'm not gonna speak for other people, what their intent was, but with a few of them, that was their expertise in business, so they were looking at doing something similar to what they were already doing in the
part of what we've been trying to come up with some clarity on is, are we trying to make this area I mean, we don't make anything, but, you know, do we see the area as sort of like a replication of the port, if you will? Or is it something that can be used to supplement or to provide services or usage that the port doesn't give? In other words, people go through here all the time. What's going to make them stop?
Growth.
Holes.
Off in the road, right?
Well, with some of those inquiries, hospitality type businesses, is that what you're?
Actually, individuals that were interested in developing. So,
Like a bed and breakfast, that type of thing?
yeah, one was a boarding house that we got, and we didn't get anything, words, and that was and again, queries about the property. So there was no real plan. There was, a lot of these things, it was, well, I'd really like to do something. So we're not.
If you think back of,
But when you say good, but they didn't go any further because weren't they told that they couldn't? I mean, where somebody's like looking at buying a piece of property and they questioned what they could do with it, and they said, well, you can't do that because it's so residential, then they're gonna walk away, they're not gonna buy it.
The only person that would have that answer would be code enforcement.
Well, let's go. Yeah. Let's get back to the whole idea of businesses that are acceptable, because as you know, let's just set a bar, and the question is, there are many people here. I mean, some people have said they like things, some people they haven't. We brought up the issue of scale. We brought up the issue of impacts, and brought up the issue of creep, which is an extremely good term because that's always what happens. In any district, there's always creep. So the question, and I misspelled it, but anybody else have any other businesses you think would be acceptable down there?
What about some of the low impact hospitality?
Like what?
Bed and breakfast with 6 or 8, or maybe even not that number.
Bed and breakfast for the,
I think it is.
there's a list of.
Yeah, there is.
And you've got access, a couple miles on the back street, getting on forward. That's a good place, it's very low impact.
Okay, so we have bed and breakfast, so that's lodging. Lodging. Well, no, I mean, bed and breakfast is a form of lodging. As you say, it's low impact. It is a low impact because a neighborhood bed and breakfast in an existing house, which has maybe 3, 4, 5 bedrooms, is different than an econo lodge. Both are obviously lodging, but the impacts and the fit, the compatibility with the character of the neighborhood are two separate things altogether. So it sounds to me, from what I've seen in some of the questionnaires and some of the things you said, that this neighborhood does have value. You see it as residential. You see it as farming, as agriculture, as residential. Historically, it's been that way. And actually, if we saw some of the things that Jen was putting up there, you saw the scale of some of those businesses weren't huge, except for the railroad car. But you got a little railroad here, so I thought it was great. Doesn't matter what I think. So let me ask you, so we've got bed and breakfast, anything else that would be small scale that would fit your perception of this neighborhood right there?
I like the idea of the artists. You can't have too much of that kind of thing. I mean, for what we are as a tourist destination, it's not specifically Arundel, but the Kennebunks. I agree with you, man, but we don't want to be Freeport. We don't want to be Lower Village. They're screwing that up pretty bad. We probably don't even want to be as big as Cape Porpoise. But they're, so how do we help the businesses that we have to stay and maintain what they need to do without sacrificing too much? I agree we could clean things up a bit and help it do that. A lot of those pictures, you go down that road there, they don't look real pretty a lot. Van Gaspie's got that real cool little pillar, crap everywhere else. You don't know what it is. you know, making it a little better, but then you do have the problem with the parking and the traffic and the, you know, but we get the traffic right now anyway. So what's with taking a little bit of that commercial money that's just going through our town? Yes, and
That's it.
That's it, right there.
Right there.
It's
That's
going
how
right to our town, it's
How
going
you
to
get
the
them to
next one.
stop and
Right.
do whatever they're gonna do that they
Well,
can't
that's
do in the port, but they can do there.
You don't want somebody to
It doesn't
do
have to
drinks,
be.
but a nice little ice cream shop. or,
Right.
you know.
Yep.
No, but I mean, we have to hear all of it, you know what I mean? Because it's a sieve. You know, right now it's just going right by us, and it's going by really fast.
So-
You know,
Gas
so-
station and an ATM.
Gas station and ATM is probably important.
I'd say.
That wasn't
thought you were
something
being
I was
facetious.
thinking of.
That is something that needs to be done.
I think that will, you know,
Private
Yes.
gas stations.
nothing like that is
at the end of-
homegrown anymore. The gas stations aren't, you know, McDonald's isn't, no matter how pretty they look. Pardon?
Got the lights 24/7.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. you
Yeah, I
know,
don't think
whereas
this
B&B's,
would be one of the
artist
things that would
things,
be.
restaurant maybe, you know, those kind of things are pulled in in a quieter way. Yeah, nothing that would be like big chain organizations. You know, gas stations and convenience stores, nothing local about those.
Well, those are all on Route 1 anyway, so,
Right.
you know, this is different.
Well, we do have a lot of traffic that goes down there.
Yeah.
The question is, does that generate enough year-round traffic to support a gas station? My guess would be no.
McCabe's old place would have been the perfect spot for the last 20 years for a gas station.
I'm sorry, which one?
McCabe's on the corner.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But you know, if we have the
People don't want to
quickness,
drive to the port. They want to stay out of that congestion. But if we're not,
More gallon before.
oh, that too.
But then you gotta go.
Can you have a gas station that fits into the neighborhood?
You build it like Freeport.
I'm sure they've done someplace.
I mean, if someone wanted to invest that kind of money and
Well,
to
that's not
put a
bad.
stipulation in,
I've seen it.
you know, the cheaper this is.
Gas
One day
stations
there's one
survive
big
on volume,
Yeah.
they survive on
They can't even
volume.
want
and
the gas
the
But if
other
you're not open to, if you're not
the other
open
stuff that they
to
sell, that's
what
why you
people are
have convenience
presenting to you,
stores,
never
big
gonna
grocery
have that
stores, and all that
open.
stuff attaching to gas
You need
stations,
to,
because they don't make it
you
on
can't stay
gas.
stagnant. You stay stagnant, you're gonna go to the back of the bus.
All right, so what do you think would fit? You're a businessman, you've got business property down there.
Everybody has their own ideas.
Well,
And
I'm asking, what are yours? Yours is just as valid as anybody else's.
Originally, that's what it was gonna be, was
Lobster pound?
a lobster pound, which
So-
is just bringing in product and selling it to a small scale, you know, no different than the lobster company on Route 1. And I have Route 1 property too, but I think that that area deserves to be treated as more of a commercial. You're surrounded by businesses already. They're on both sides of you, across the street. Why not be able to utilize what you have and sit there and watch other people try to keep what they have going? And if you don't open up what they can do with it, those businesses are just gonna die anyways.
What is the goal of the committee? Is it to bring in tax dollars, or is it to bring in people to the area? I mean, what is the underlying goal of this project?
Of this project or of the EDC?
Of the EDC.
The EDC, our main goal is to help the businesses in the area and to reduce the residential tax base.
'Cause I love the idea of nurseries and artist galleries and things like that, but those aren't really revenue producing.
No.
But it adds,
Fine with
But
me,
it also,
but
but it,
that's,
but it adds growth in the community.
yeah, you know, it,
Our big, I think our big responsibility is we've, you know, spent the money that everyone allotted us to do this study. So that's in the works right now. We have not gotten the answers back yet. The reason why this had come about was because they were doing some change in the zoning. You know, so at the same time, it was important for us to get your feedback so that when those answers do come back, we can have a preset of already what is available, what is out there, what people want. Right, because we really, I feel that we're evolving and it's a great place to grow, but we need some community places where people can be covered.
Right, I agree. I'm hoping that you wouldn't say underlying areas to where you commercial themselves.
It's also to create growth that's consistent with the character of the town, the history, the character of the town, and what people want this town to become.
So what is the history and the character of this neighborhood? You said residential.
Well,
Has no real architectural gems. Does it have any architectural gems besides on River Road?
Would you say the history is residential?
Yeah. Well, no, the history of the current land use pattern is pretty much residential with occasional.
Right, but the history of the townhouse district is not.
Was
It
it-
was
It's
very-
changing, and it's changed, and now it's residential. So the question is, when you say something that's compatible with with the character, we're talking about something that's compatible with either the existing character or the character that you perceive it to be. And right now, what this group has done is they've identified it as residential, although there's, with some spatterings of business, non-residential activities in it. So I still don't think we've got our full hands around what kind of businesses you really would like to see in this district that you think would be appropriate. You know, we have the lobster, basically fish retail, that would probably be a seasonal business, is that what you're looking at? What would you do in the winter time?
Well, I still live there, it's a two-story, I live above it, and it's basically just garages down below.
Okay. So we're saying, basically, you're putting a large a home business on steroids down below, with a lot more traffic than usually generated by home businesses. Okay, so we have a seasonal lobster pound or fish or seafood retail, which is in character with the region. Everybody who's coming here wants seafood. Any other businesses that would fit?
What about attaching each shower house next to the lobster? Is that allowed in that area?
No.
No, but would you want it to be?
Nobody's got money. So, we got restaurants?
I think the question is not necessarily what would you want to open yourself as a business, but having lived there and you're in that area, if you're driving by or if you want something next to you, what would you see that you would like to see going in there, or what would you definitely see that you would definitely not ever want to see going in there because you wouldn't want it next to your house or next to your small business or whatever. It's not necessarily what you would open up in your house as a business. That's not kind of what we're asking. What would you want to see there? What would you like to have next to you that you could go, walk next door and get a bagel and a cup of coffee, or get some fresh
Everybody's got
fish?
their own idea, so I mean, if you limit it to, all right, we'd like to have an ice cream shop and something else, somebody that has a house might have their own idea that may be a great addition to the area. So
And it may
you gotta
fit in
kinda,
that definition.
You can't limit it, you need to open it up and
Okay, open it up for us. Go ahead, open it up, give me some ideas.
Well,
I'm just saying, I mean, you can't just throw out, can't tell you 10 businesses I want in the area, but everybody's got their own ideas of what they would like to do out of their dwelling there you have.
Or have their neighbors do. I mean, I think the question he's asking is,
Exactly, like
how would you
my
describe
neighbors
the
that,
area that you'd like to
my
live in?
neighbors that used to own half of the Sinclairs. And Tom was half owner, and they wanted to do a nursery there. And they own Kennebunk Property Services, but they wanted to put it there, and they were told they couldn't.
How about this way? How about from like a traffic or light pollution or noise pollution aspect? What would you not want to have?
Yeah, what,
Jeff Boyd.
What? A jet board.
We'll see that's.
But if the nursery went in, the nursery were to go in, okay, suppose it had been allowed, right? For cannabis. Would that sit with you okay? Would that be okay?
yeah, they were my neighbors. I was buying property and was over there quite frequently. People are gonna walk and buy shrubs and stuff and flowers, that's not a bad impact on the area.
But then you're gonna have, in the summertime, you're gonna have landscapers showing up there, picking up their stuff to go out
Yeah,
for the day
Brown,
at 5 in the
waking
morning.
up.
Brown across the street.
It's true.
Those trucks
That
all
doesn't bother me a bit.
4:30.
Oh, and then you get further down, you go, there's a Lovejoy's and
All
stuff,
around.
there's trucks all around.
60 miles an hour people fly down that road there, and, it's just ridiculous. Like,
Yeah,
as soon as they go past the church and they see there's no cops there, they're going 50, 60 miles an hour.
I think, yeah.
But getting back to the Cape Porpoise model. I mean, if you look down, you got the corner store, and then you got one restaurant, then you got another restaurant, you got another restaurant, and then you got a doctor's office right next door to that restaurant, and then you got a little church, and, it's,
Hey, lady.
then you got residents all in between, all right there. Oh, you have a nice little new antique place, all kinds of galleries.
Live there and do physical therapy as well. So,
I think
you can't limit it to say, well, we'd like to have these things, because there might be something that none of us have thought of that might be a great idea.
And technically, there are ways that we do that without specifying. We can't list every single little idea anybody's had. Well, we would use broad brush strokes, like retail, no greater than 25,100 feet.
But can I bring us
Square
back
feet,
here,
things
John?
like that.
Can I bring us back here? I think for myself, as not as an EDC member, as the business owner's wing, it's important to me to find out that my neighbors are okay, that the small business stipulation can happen there.
Of course.
Because right now, I can't have that, the way we have it. So it's like, now as a member of the EDC, I'll work really hard with everyone and we'll listen to the study and present the ideas of this is what can happen. But for mine, the first hurdle was, are you gonna be okay that we go back to having small business right next to residential?
Well, I think with the
That's
standards.
what Maine is all about, isn't it?
Yeah, it gets down to the standards. If you put the proper standards in place to protect the residents, I mean,
Well, what are the standards? It doesn't matter what I did as a
We keep bringing up Cape Porpoise.
Yes.
The nice thing about Cape Porpoise, that could be nice about this corner area, there's a good mix. Architecturally, they all blend. There aren't these stone glass edifices.
Yeah,
Nothing
exactly.
is 3 stories
Yeah.
high. Nothing takes up 30 or 40 or 50 parking spaces. The biggest parking space is Bradford.
Yeah.
It's been there forever.
Yeah.
If you could keep the corner area.
About 12 spaces.
I mean, if you could keep the corner area that we're talking about, if you could keep that atmosphere,
Yeah.
that general appearance, just about anything could go in. If it didn't adversely impact the way the place looks.
Right.
John?
We're talking about building a neighborhood, most of which is already there. And I almost want to say that's impossible, but if we have we already have community commercial south and community commercial north, which are mixed use zones. And there's no formula for the mix. What if we tweaked it a little bit and had two phases or two types of mixed use zones? Mixed use residential and mixed use commercial. And the third word tells you where the emphasis is. So this little corner, listening to everybody, would be mixed use residential. Emphasis on residential, so that the people who have properties there, who value the woods and the open space and the relative quiet, and the fact that, I love the fact that your kids can walk down the road to a general store, that all stays. But because it's mixed use, it gets you off the economic hook with regards to existing commercial properties. The other one, mixed-use commercial, might more logically apply to the current CCS and CCN that I referred to, where some of the commercial uses there are already sizable, and the emphasis there would be more on the commercial end and have perhaps more impact on residences. Maybe not in those places, maybe someplace else. Community commercial north and south. Community commercial north is the eastern end of Route 111, where Ollie's is.
Okay,
And then the community commercial south is at the southern end of Route 1. But they have similar descriptions in the comprehensive plan. So,
Well, that's what we'd probably be wanting to do in this district, is look at where the emphasis should be on. Should be on the commercial, should be on the residential. And that's the real issue here, isn't it? What is too much? What is too little? what is appropriate, what is not appropriate.
Well, I had one more point I wanted to make. The other sticking point here, and this occurs all over town, is this business of grandfathered / non-conforming uses. We have a number of businesses in this town who are grandfathered non-conforming uses, who are absolutely hamstrung. I can think of one business that he has 30 acres. He can't move. And there's no reason for it except we have an ordinance that says he can't move. He would like to expand. It wouldn't hurt anybody.
He's in an R4
And he's,
district.
right, yeah, and there's a house on the property, you know, it's, the rule needs to be flexible depending upon circumstances, and maybe one of the keys to this is acreage. If you're on an acre, you probably have limitations, and should have, because your neighbors are right there. But if you're on 10 acres, maybe even though you're in the same technical zone, you should have a different set of limitations, because the impact on your neighbors will be quite so immediate.
What if the neighbors on both sides of businesses?
Well, I was referring more to the situations in residential areas, so, but that, you know, that's another variable, maybe that changes things a little bit too.
So it's really a context issue as well as you're using size or acreage as a mitigator of impacts. That the very fact that there's a 30 acres surrounding is automatically putting distance between you and your neighbors, which automatically provides a mitigation of some
Right.
sort.
And it's something I think that we have been ignoring, and it's an obvious and easily measurable, quantifiable mitigator. You know, if you're 500 feet from the nearest neighbor, you're 500 feet from the nearest neighbor. End of discussion.
Can you come up with impact? Can you come up with artificial ways of creating 500 feet without being 500 feet? You do it by buffering, by containment, by putting things farthest part of the lot is.
No, because then you add another 500 pages to your ordinance and it becomes unenforceable. Sorry.
500 pages.
Listening to everybody talk the visual distance buffering, hours of operation, input noise, all of the nuisances that go in screening, I think distances are all standard parts of our ordinance that we look at for every single building. So that we excluded in the past for perhaps, but not recently. So I think all of those things are mitigating. This concept of mixed use residential, the concept I love, the term probably doesn't help the bank much. So,
It does. Honestly,
emphasis on residential, emphasis in this area on the more of the commercial build. I don't know how you get to a percentage.
Honestly, it's
once it's mixed use, that's all I hear.
It's the non-conforming, I think, that it comes after.
Yeah, we've taken care of that in other areas.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to bring up a point that people have touched on a little bit here is this area is a nice little community. We can all agree that we all enjoy it here. One of the things we do enjoy is having lakes. And not to put too much emphasis on that one store, but it was pretty bad when we first moved here and Winks was closed. And not knowing if it was going to open again, I was very disappointed. And I was very glad when it reopened, and it seems to provide a little sense of community. Doing a little bit more economic development might be a way of ensuring that continuation. Because if all you have is one store that's kind of the center of things, God forbid it burns. Something happens again. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, anything happens. And then you lose that all over again and you're back to square one. Having a couple different, 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know, a little half dozen cluster of different types of things, or the possibility for different types of things, will ensure that going forward, we can maintain this type of, nothing's going to stay the same, but it doesn't have to change too much at any one given time.
So
I've
creating,
been here for 15 years and I haven't seen it change, except for the ownership of
But I think that's why the townspeople voted to go out with this study and spend that money. not very much has changed. A lot of it, I think, because of the way ordinances
And that's
were
pretty
written.
fair
And
in
we
this
haven't,
world we live
there's
in.
been no emphasis really, or reached out to attract people with any.
But to add to
Is you want to
But
create
there's
a
growth on
neighborhood.
both sides.
I don't wanna lose what we have.
No, but you'd like to make it more, I mean, nothing's going to happen earlier,
Yeah.
but life is uncertain, so.
Okay, that's it, I'm just saying, if we want to keep what we have, it might be worth developing enough so that if one business does go down or change hands or closes for any given amount of time, we still got other things around that still make it seem like a community.
Right.
So you're talking about critical mass, you're talking about a certain level of critical mass so that so that commercial area remains an identifiable, viable place, even if one business or two businesses.
Yeah.
Perfect example, Forefathers closing, okay? I mean, yes, big restaurant, whatever, but with that closing, we lost a big chunk of
Right.
our life. You know, I'm not saying, okay, let's bring the big bands back and all, for whatever reason, but right now, we can't bring anything back that helps support that little area.
Right, that would be up for whatever we need to do to ensure that we have, because you can't just squeeze everything off until nothing's left.
Yeah.
And then expect it to still be a community.
And I think Jen would agree too, that other businesses to the area is good for her business. I mean, not just if she was to close, but it will probably prevent her from having to close because
Right.
more of the people that come to the area will, you know, just make her business all the better. You know, it's the same thing with the businesses on Route 1. The more that's there, the better the rest of the businesses do.
And that wouldn't go
The key of
all
it
over.
is having, you know, since I've been there, 7 people turned down. You know, you've got the town of Kennebunkport telling you that no one's asked to do business on their side. We've had 7 really nice, attractive, small businesses that would fit in that area that we've turned away.
I
Just we're much nicer.
Wait, well, no, but did this all get started,
We've turned them away
Chad?
too. We've turned them all away.
Chad, I believe when we first started talking about this, there was, the people that come in and ask the inquiries about putting businesses, majority have all been in that area, or you've had more requests for that area? Or
What I've had is I've had non-conforming commercial properties that are vacant or underperforming, or underpopulated, if you will. They're underutilized.
Great.
And so they see an opportunity to use what is, in most cases, was former or an existing commercial space and want to expand upon its existing use, which they can't.
But you had more queries there in that area than you've had in any other area, even though
No?
we had a conversation similar to that.
I've had
Yeah,
a
we're getting correctly,
number of
but-
them. I've had a number of them in the CCN and the CCS district. We've had them in the CCS district. We've had them in the CCN district. We've had a lot on forefathers. We've had 3 or 4 on forefathers, and that's pretty much been the target in that particular area. We haven't really had any other requests. Forefathers and the Grange. Those are the 2 targets.
The
to
Grange,
these
and you
companies.
had Sinclair's Place. you had-
Sinclair's, they
Yeah.
actively.
I
try to do
don't,
that.
I'll have to take your word at it. I'm just speaking of recent memory, but
you know.
obviously, what if we hadn't? But probably Sinclair's is another one. These are existing commercial spaces that have lost their non-conforming, lost their conforming status, either by zoning or by abandonment as business for a period of time. So they revert to the prevailing ordinance, which is very heavily residential. It is the residential conservation district down there. Even though there are uses that are permitted. So what we've got, you guys must be getting tired, so I'll probably have to need to wrap this up. But what we've got, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
What we've got right now is, we've got sort of a consensus, well, we don't have full consensus, but we have a charge that we want to explore, looking at mixed use with controls, mixed use with a governor on it of some sort. Something that where we have a critical mass of smaller businesses that is AKA porpoise, even though that's something that I don't think we're going to be able to compete directly with. They've got the market on that. We've got
Yes,
that
we
locked
can.
up.
Of course we can. Why can't
Yes,
we?
don't
underestimate us.
Why can't we do that?
Come on, Ted.
And
We don't
then,
have to. Not playing that game.
We're not.
and
Oh, that's right.
I
and
don't
also
think
the, let me finish this up. And also the issue of, the issue is that we're looking at other kinds of businesses in this area, but they've got to be within a certain scale. And that's what I'm hearing from you. We have existing properties, commercial properties that need to be given some sort of status. It's going to be hard from a legal standpoint. But we're looking at small scale stuff. Is there any business that would be absolutely an anathema to you as neighbors and property owners? Anything over, let's say, a 10,000 square foot building? A retail area. And we heard from one that any kind of thing that's outside of a home occupation would be just intolerable. How about the rest of you? What's your scale?
That's why you don't have any growth in this town.
Well, in that part of the town, no, we don't, because it's not zoned for that. But
I think it's always been difficult for a business to come into this town and do certain things from what I've heard of different people over the years.
I'll be honest with you, I'm fairly new here. I've been here three years, just about 3 years. In doing an assessment of your zoning ordinance, zoning ordinance is hard. I mean, there was a period when you had conditional uses for everything that looked like it was an impediment. That was psychological. It really wasn't really that much of an impediment because the conditional use is a permitted use with conditions. That's all it really is. But you've got probably the most liberal sign ordinance I've ever seen in Southern Maine. Our requirements are not that strict. And you've got one of the prime pieces of real estate on, let's say, Route 1 and Route 111, where you got a big hole between Biddeford and Kennebunk. What's going on? I don't think it's your regulations, because you've got 1 acre zoning in an area with no sewer. On wetlands, quite frankly, on non-berg, seasonal high water table soils, that if you were in Kennebunk, you would have 5 acre zoning. So I don't think it's that. I think it's something else. I think that's one of the reasons why we're doing this study, is we have, I think in some ways we have an image problem. We do have structural problems. We do have some zoning problems, there's no question. We do have some other problems that we're fixing. But I think Arundel is, it's got some other issue that we've got to figure out what that is. Because we're in a prime location. How much more of a prime location can we get, really? Yes, sir. I haven't heard much from you tonight.
How many people in this area right here live in that zone we're talking about? Less than half? I mean, I don't. I really don't care what goes down there. I would like to see something go in there. I'd like to see, I don't care if it's a McDonald's, I don't care if it's a Burger King. Those are gonna build businesses, right? You are never gonna change the output of that down there. I would not wanna go down there in your area and build a nice house and have Linda Medor change that into a parking lot, and there's 50 mobile homes coming in and out of there every weekend. And where else you gonna go? I mean, what are you gonna do down there? Would you buy your property knowing what exists today?
That property?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you would. When
Yeah,
you,
I don't know, it's interesting. What's so different? I mean,
well, it's gonna,
it's
if you want industry, or if you want these small businesses and everything, it's gonna be more traffic?
No, I think the
Traffic's already there.
Yeah, you already know.
It's
Traffic's already there.
gonna be a lot more.
You know, just, well,
It's
not
gonna be all captured.
Traffic goes through. I mean, there's a 5 point there when you get Kennebunk.
I agree. But would you go build a $500,000 house next to Linda's place?
Why wouldn't you?
Because you're gonna turn it into a parking lot.
No, that was just an idea.
Okay, I know, but it is an idea.
No, but, okay,
That's
first of
exactly
all, if
my
you're
mind.
talking about what,
But if
where
you-
my house is?
No, where the forefathers.
Okay, well, either one, my house or forefathers is set back off the road, it's buffered, and you wouldn't see them. So it's not like the neighbors would, it's not like you could put 50 of them in there.
Don't tell me that. What I mean, Linda, if you get 35 that went in there back and forth every weekend, and you lived on the corner of where that was going, you would get ticked off.
But they're gonna go there anyway.
yeah, they all come in.
Yeah, they're all going to,
Okay, that's true. They're coming
right, they're going right by, they go all go down.
Let
Okay,
me
but-
put it this way, they have a run over that goes to the trolley museum right now.
Yeah,
Okay, so let's put 3 or 4 other places in there where they can park.
Billy Gay could even park his trolleys next door at St. Clair's probably years ago.
I mean, I'm just
I
saying.
mean,
Okay,
But I mean, this
But,
is
you
what's
know-
important to bring out, because like you can put in the zoning that that could not be used for that. You know what I mean?
Or could,
That's-
or limit it.
Or limit it, that's what,
We just know that that is something right now
that they need.
that they need. It's a need out there, and somebody, if they can find a place to park, you know, these trolleys or buses, could probably make themselves a little bit of money if they can get close enough to
If
Candy.
there is growth in that in the town of Arundel, I do hope it's there, and not in my area, I can tell you that.
Oh, is that in character, the parking lot's being character of the neighborhood?
Yeah, not really.
You know, you got enough woods back there, it depends on how far back they stand, and if, you know what I mean, if they're not next to somebody's house, you're
Yeah, as long
right.
as,
Talking about the boarding houses, they'd be moneymakers for the zoning. Basically, instead of developing a character for the town, you become an adjunct of Kennebunkport or Village, just helping them alleviate their problem.
That's right, you become a parking lot for somebody else. The high value stuff all takes
They
place
came
down there.
themselves into a corner with parking. They've got a lot of kids coming up from Jamaica and Brazil to wait on tables. Kids with no place to live, boarding houses. Those
But,
will
but
run.
what if, say, you had a business that left there at 9 o'clock in the morning and didn't return until 9 o'clock at night? But they needed a lot where they could house 15 vehicles at night.
Oh, you still got a big parking lot in Arundel, under parking. Kind of up.
Just throwing it out there, just throwing, you know.
Yeah, it's just
If
a-
it- if it wasn't
it's a
going out during the
moneymaker,
day.
but It's a moneymaker, but it doesn't do anything to develop the character of the town.
no.
Not to develop the character, probably not, but I mean, but like anything else, you have to,
But it would certainly help
Right.
support the
It would help
town,
support.
support other things. too.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's just an issue that they have that we put on the table.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's already done right, so people wouldn't even know it was there.
that's
You know?
just standards. You know
Right.
what I mean? You just don't throw anything out there, you have to like protect the community, protect, you know, what we have there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You would ask what we would not want to see.
Yeah.
I would be against chains. Chains, McDonald's, Burger King, that kind of.
What is it that bothers you about the chain? What's the difference between a McDonald's and just a local restaurant?
Well, hopefully local restaurants owned locally. And I've seen in other towns, those chains come in and they've got more lawyers than you can shake a stick at. And they'll run roughshod over anything you've got. And so I would like to see the character be more local grown, local, you know, something, because people can go anywhere and get McDonald's or Burger King, you can't swing their cat around this country and not hit something like that. But if we can offer them something different, nobody else has got wings, nobody else has got a great home bike shopping. You know, I mean, those are the kind of things that people are gonna say, yeah, Arundel, we want the Kennebunk, but you don't know.
I don't think Arundel allows drive-throughs, do they? Anyways? They do?
Some circumstances.
Because I was gonna say.
What we have is we have limitations on size. See, what you run into, when you just talked about, it, you just violated the Commerce Clause. That's a constitutional issue I don't want to get into.
Yeah, I know.
I am saying, you can have a business here because of who you are. You can't because of who you are. And it has
But
no
you
other
can have
basis except
designs.
I don't like your business.
Design
You're
standards that don't allow
But you
it.
had design standards.
Right.
Freeport tried it. Didn't work, did it? They still got McDonald's because they wanted to be there so badly, they changed their model. They find that Rite Aid did the same thing in communities all around us where they had to change their model in order to go to Saco, Bedford, or Old Orchard Beach, for instance. So that's a difficult one. It can be done, it's usually done in size. But what you limit on size, you're also limiting local businesses on size too. So you may want to stop, you know, McDonald's coming in, but you'll also stop a Bailey's from going in, which may not be such a bad idea, but Skirtle, clam bake, the one with the parking lot that's bigger than Walmart. That's a little overstatement, I think.
Yeah, if I may just a second.
Sure.
I think you're doing the right thing, trying to focus on what you want for the atmosphere of that community, because originally we talked about forming the EDC, it was to establish a tax base that was going to enhance taxes in the city, in the town, as opposed to balancing it strictly on the residential. I think we can all understand that's not, this restructuring of the town is not going to contribute to that tax bill. But if there's going to be something that's taxable there, maybe other than some property taxes to some degree, there's probably not going to be a lot of assets that are going to be down there that are taxable. Chad and I talked about, we've actually looked at what are the types of businesses that we go after that are taxable and bring some real tax income. Okay? And they won't exist down there. They don't believe unless you do.
Well, they may not. The only thing that they do is create Arundel as a destination. It's one of the spokes
True.
in the wheel, in our economic development wheel, of making Arundel a destination. See, our end result is to make Arundel as a destination, whether it be for tourism and commercial development and residential development. It's to put Arundel on the map so that we can attract high-quality kinds of taxes.
Right, I think it's more about a bigger picture, you know, instead of developing a sense of community, getting Arundel, you know, in that mindset of a place to be, and then you can sort of, once you build that brand, it's going to be easier to attract businesses to other parts of town, and, you know, where we can actually make more money out of it.
Agreed. That's why I'm trying to figure out why that big hole in Route 1 exists.
And this is all, we're
That
also,
area down there, this is a real large scheme thing, but could you increment like TIFs and stuff like that, would that be allowed in that area?
Yeah, we could do a TIF. It would be a question of, is that where you want to invest your TIF time? Because you're limited to 5% of your total land mass for a TIF. You make them short-term ones, and you can do akin of a revolving TIF program, because they limit the length of their TIFs. They're always turning them over from their new project. You could do that, sure. Yeah, you could take TIF, you can also
Zach, can you
transfer.
explain a little bit what TIF is?
Yeah.
let's go.
Oh, I'm sorry. TIF is a tax increment finance district. It is a district, it's about the only tool that the state legislature gives to municipalities in terms of providing tax incentives to businesses at a municipal level. States have its own programs, the Fed has their own programs. But it's basically a situation where the community establishes this district in which it proposes new development to occur. And the ideal situation is that the TIF monies, the monies that are available for public investment or reinvestment, come from the difference between the value of the land prior to development and the value of the land after development. And then that money in there is basically sheltered money. It's sheltered from county tax, it's sheltered from some school formulas, and it can be shifted to downtown programs. It can be used to make investments in infrastructure that support that district. It can be shifted to make improvements, public improvements for downtown areas. So, you know, it's a tool that's used very regularly. It's the only tool we've got. And what it does is it allows us to take the difference called captured value and invest it into public improvements or into public programs. And also shields revenue.
So instead of giving the money to the state, you get to reinvest it in your own town?
Well, no, it's more like instead of, you get it shielded from county and.
Yes, the answer is yes. Short answer.
Yeah.
From everybody, instead of giving it away, you get to use that same money that you would have did into the county or to the state, reinvest that same portion for a period of time.
Usually for a period of anywhere from 10 to 30 years. It's all up to you. So that's a TIF district you would use for downtown revitalization. For this district, you could TIF it. You could use the monies for putting the sidewalks. You can use the monies for extending. So there's a number of different things you can use it for. Do it for
Well,
environmental.
that's the other issue. I mean, you want this to be a dirt path community, or a sidewalk community for that area of town. You know, I mean, start getting into sidewalks, talking streetlights.
Those are all issues that,
question.
quite frankly speaking, the denser population you get into an area and make it a nexus, make it a destination, which is what you're talking about. Your kids walk down. Eventually you get enough down there and a lot of people walk in there, and now suddenly we have a potential hazard. The road there isn't wide enough. Rundle Road is actually not a very wide road. We've got lousy shoulders. We have very limited shoulders. So eventually you might start saying, whoa, geez, we need to provide safety. There's a call for light. Those are design issues that's got to be made by the selectmen and by the town. But there are consequences to growth. One of the consequences is the demand for better services and improved transportation systems.
At this point, let's hope we have those problems.
Yeah,
I'm looking for it.
That's
I would like that.
There you go.
And potential hazards that are years down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
Or else you
Best
can do it,
scenario.
or else you can put in those improvements as a way of enticing development in. You'll find that most of your TIF districts are used, let's say the classic example of using TIF districts for downtown revitalization. That TIF money is used to essentially finance the improvements that make it more attractive. The TIF district won't pay for the brick sidewalks and the street lights and the expanded bump outs and all the rest of that. Frankly, that's how Kennebunk did it. That's how we did it in Old Orchard Beach. That's how Gardner did it. It's all been done by TIF districts. And the intent is to make it a more attractive place for business. Whether there's a dollar for dollar benefit is something yet to be seen in some places. But the fact is that's a mechanism that you can use. So you're not always just using tax dollars. They're tax dollars. It's just dollars that you haven't budgeted into your general fund. They're dedicated dollars. And they're also shielded from funding formulas. So it's one of the few tools we've got. If the governor lets us keep that one too. But, yes,
I mean, I would probably, speaking for most people here, would probably want to start wrapping.
I agree.
I agree. Getting close to 9 o'clock, I don't know anyone else. I haven't had dinner yet. I'm starving.
I've been having dinner over here on Jen's place.
I can only have some more sugary.
Well, thank you. We never got through all the questions because this group is pretty engaging and asked a lot of questions, and we went in directions I wasn't expecting. That's terrific, because that's what we want. I think you've given us an idea of what the limits are, what is acceptable, what isn't. This isn't going to be the end. We're going to need more. We need more input from you folks. We'll probably do some more fine-tuning now of some of the ideas that we've gotten here tonight, some of the limits, some of the directions you want to go, and we'll have another meeting in which we invite you to come back and see what kind of mess we've made of things.
And also, if I could just say, follow the town website, because we are going to have some stuff coming up for the town in relation to our study, that we're going to have some town meetings, some stuff where the guy's coming in who's conducting the study that is going to want input from folks in the town. And so watch the website, spread the word, come out and get your opinions in there, because it's really going to be important as for the direction that we have in the future. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also like to add just to that, if you want to continue in contact and be on our mailing list and our notification list of activities this board does and the planning board does, then what you do is make sure your email is on that sign-in form, okay? And we will notify you unless you specifically don't want us to do that. But we'll keep you up to date on all the things that we're doing. It might be annoying after a while, but we will keep you up to date on every little minutia thing we do. So, those of you who haven't given your emails, please do. Appreciate it. With that,
It might just be worth mentioning that if anybody does sign up for email, you will get an email from us which requires you to verify that that is your email address. If you don't send that verification back, you won't be included on the email list. And that is quite important. We recruited a lot of people to sign up during the election last week, and an awful lot of them never verified, so unfortunately they're not on the list.
Did anybody have any final urgent points they wanted to make before we wrap it up, or? No?
Thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I can't speak more. Not that I don't want to, really, so,
You shot right over there, you're great. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Tabulate it.
yes, no, I had to do something.
Yes, I do.
And if I ever leave
My name is Linda Sue. Okay, I've been Linda Sue for the past 20 years. Congratulations.